Have mercy on me, a sinner.
Hello, my name is Corey Washington, author, educator, author of 2 books on Jimi Hendrix, Nobody Cages Me, and Jimi Hendrix Black Legacy, A Dream Deferred, available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever books are sold. Today we're going to continue with our masterclass, but this time we're going to focus on Jimi's biggest outreach to the black community, the band of Gypsies. Now, Jimi hooked up with his 2 buddies, Billy Cox on bass and Buddy Miles on drums and vocals. And they made for a dynamic power trio of soul rock, funk rock. The bulk of their material that we know came from 4 historic concerts during New Year's Eve 1969 and New Year's Day 1970 at the Fillmore East in New York City. They also rehearsed together, and some of those sessions were recorded. They did some studio sessions as well. Notable songs from their time together: Machine Gun, which is considered Jimi's masterpiece; Who Knows, a very catchy beat; Power of Soul. It's a mantra that people still live by today. Later, even in 1971, James Brown was talking about soul power. Also, another song called Earth Blues, which was the closest that Jimi came to a harmonic gospel song. One other song they did, which closed out one of their live performances, was We Gotta Live Together. Straight nasty funk with that old time gospel feel, especially when it comes to the climax of the song. That's just a little taste of it. You can kind of hear coming in. This is Who Knows. This is not the version that was on the album, but this was the version that came out later. Not as polished as the original one that came on the album, but it just kind of gives you that feel, a nice kind of groove. And I've heard people in Chicago say that they can even step to this song, like they do stepping in Chicago, and they said that you can actually step to this song. So that's the kind of laid back beat it has, very unusual for a Jimi Hendrix song. And so you kind of hear him kind of feeding into the crowd, and then they kind of go into the song as it kind of goes on. You notice the call and response, that old time black tradition. And you can kind of hear Buddy and Jimi going back and forth. Once they got it down pat, it was really something to behold. That call and response, and just everybody feeding off of one another. And this is this kind of song that kind of grasps a lot of black people's attention. Kind of hear Jimi just kind of going with the groove and doing his own thing sometimes. So that's Who Knows, a different version there. So basically, the Band of Gypsies consisted, like I said, of Jimi Hendrix, Buddy Miles, Billy Cox. You can see on the different things here. Billy Cox, of course, bass, Jimmy on guitar, Buddy Miles on drums and vocals. In my book, Jimi Hendrix Black Legacy, I have a very comprehensive write-up on the Band of Gypsies. It's sort of almost like a mini book on the Band of Gypsies, where I talk about the situation that led up to them playing together, the songs that they were known for, the controversy surrounding the breakup of the group. List 10 strong reasons why the Band of Gypsies should be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They're already in the R&B Hall of Fame. Talk about the popular misconceptions of the Band of Gypsies. I also have some exclusive quotes from The Last Gypsy Standing, Billy Cox. And the reason why this part in my book is so comprehensive and extensive is because at one point I was pitching the idea to, I think it's 33 and a Third. They have these little small book series where they focus on one album, and they were putting out calls for submissions. And so I remember Ricky Vincent was also doing one too. He wanted to do the Mothership Connection for Parliament Funkadelic, and I wanted to do the Band of Gypsies. And for some reason or other, they didn't pick up my submission, but I had already put so much into it that I had all this information compiled, and it's actually what propelled me to pick up my book and get it finished, because I was like, this right here could be the nucleus of something that I could build around. And so that's why I have so much about the Band of Gypsies in my Jimi Hendrix Black Legacy book. Let's talk about a very interesting topic that many books or people just don't really get into. Excuse me. It's what I like to call Jimmy's top conduits to urban or black radio. Now, what do I mean by conduits? Well, Jimmy never really got any play on black radio. The excuse was always that his music didn't fit the format. It was either classified as white music, hard rock, classic rock, or anything outside the realms of soulful music. But that couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. Since Jimmy couldn't get play on black radio, he had to rely on his conduits to get his style of play over to the black masses listening to the radio. Sadly, these conduits really flooded the airwaves after Jimmy's death. So Jimi Hendrix did not get played much on black radio, but if you listen closely, his style of guitar playing was featured, and that's what I'm gonna break down to you. But you must ask yourself this very poignant question. If radio program directors on black radio played Jimmy's conduits, why couldn't they play Jimi Hendrix himself? Kind of makes you think. Let's take a look at some of these conduits here. Okay, first off, we're going to start with the Ernie Isley. Had a chance to be on a radio show with him out of Mississippi. Had a chance to be on Soul Patrol with him and Mr. McNeil from the Black Rock Coalition. Had a very interesting discussion. But let's take a listen to some of Ernie Isley's music, and you can judge for yourself on what I mean. So you kind of see Ernie opening up with that intro guitar solo. Then you got Ronald Isley coming in with the smooth vocals to make sure it's palatable for R&B radio. And maybe that's something Jimmy was missing. Maybe he could have got with a smooth. He could have let Buddy Miles do some more vocals, and they could have structured a song specifically for black radio. But you know, just listen to Ernie Isley when he comes back in. You know, not too much, just a little bit. And they always give Ernie an opportunity to play his solo, you know, like right here. So ask yourself, they could play that on black radio, why couldn't they play Jimmy? They could have let, you know, here's Ernie. So you hear all of that guitar playing, and this is an R&B song. You know, still got all the elements of R&B, some elements of funk, and a whole lot of rock guitar in there. And this is the style Jimmy was going with when it came to the Band of Gypsies. Ernie has his guitar tuned a certain way to make it, as I mentioned, I like to use this word palatable. More palatable for the R&B crowd or R&B radio. You know, it's not real screechy, but Jimmy was experimenting with that tone as well on a lot of his songs. So let's take a listen to our next conduit for Jimmy, which is the great Eddie Hazel. Let's take a listen to something he did from Parliament Funkadelic. Starts off nice and slow and quiet, and then kind of just creeps up on you. You know, almost like a dirge. And I mean, this is Eddie Hazel at his finest. You have a lot of people, you know, they love Eddie Hazel, and they consider him 100% funk. So that's why I always say, what about Jimmy? I mean, he's the father of all of this kind of style of music. Very soulful and rock at the same time. The genesis of all this style of guitar playing is Jimi Hendrix. You know, people built on it and added their own flavor as time went on, but as you can see, you know, Eddie Hazel's doing his own thing, putting his own soul into it. But Jimmy showed everybody the way to go. Very melodic, soulful playing. That's the great Eddie Hazel from Parliament Funkadelic fame. Also, Earth, Wind, and Fire, they had some elements of where they played rock guitar in there. You know, wasn't as outlandish as Ernie and Eddie, but still the elements were there. In my book, I bring out exactly which songs did that. Just had a very fine documentary by Questlove on the Earth, Wind, and Fire. Also, Ohio Players, they had a song, there's a couple of songs that would fit in that Jimmy frame, like this one. You know, Sugarfoot. Every now and then, they would play the guitars, you know, crank it up on a guitar. Sugarfoot. And then they go into a little jazzy type thing. But in between the jazzy parts, they would have a, rock guitar. And there's a part at the end I want you to pay close attention to. And then let's fast forward. But you'll really hear the Jimi Hendrix at the end. And right here. And let's just listen to Sugarfoot. This is what I would call Sugarfoot's tribute to Jimi Hendrix. So that's the great Sugarfoot. And of course, after Jimmy died, you still had Buddy Miles doing his thing. You know, he would feature some guitar playing on his songs, soulful songs. Sometimes he would even play the guitar himself. And of course, you got Slave, which had a smash song, which featured a lot of guitar, and a lot of their songs featured guitar. Slave. This is a Volcanic Eruption. Or, well, I might have gotten the title wrong. Rupture, Volcanic Rupture or Eruption? Or, no, Volcanic. I got it. It's got Volcano in there somewhere. And so people listen to stuff like this, and of course it's got the funky bass line and the funky beat and everything. And it just proves that you could throw in some rock guitar over any kind of funky backdrop and it automatically becomes funk. Like you build up to the bass, the funk elements like they're doing right now, and then just out of nowhere, you come in with the rock guitar. And you'll hear it in a little bit. It just comes out of nowhere, just like it's been lingering around the whole time, just jumps up and bites you like a snake. You know, you just kind of let that beat groove. And I just want you to listen to how the electric guitar just kind of just jumps in there, just kind of gets in where it fits in. You know, they've been going with the groove for a while. And just as sure as I'm talking, there you go. I think their most famous example of showcasing Jimmy's complex guitar playing to the black masses will be their song Slide. But just listen to this, you know. This is all Jimi Hendrix, right here. What Jimmy was trying to do with the Band of Gypsies, these other groups completed his mission later on. And it really caught on with black people. And they were doing this before Prince, so. So those are some examples right there, he just goes off on the guitar, like, he takes a little break, then you come right back in there. And it's just crazy, this stuff sounds so good, and people forget that you're listening to something that Jimi Hendrix birthed. It's just the funky beat is just pulsating in the background, and it's just that rock guitar layered on top of it. That's Jimi Hendrix and the Band of Gypsies. Let's go. I'm trying to think who's the guitar player on this. Is it Drac? I think Mark Adams was bass. So, it's one of my favorite Slave songs right there. All right, let's take a look at Janet Jackson and Michael Jackson did a song together, Scream. And you can hear the guitar elements in this song. Michael Jackson started to do a lot of stuff with guitars, even from his Thriller album, Beat It. He would do a lot of rock guitar in there. It would have been great to hear him and Jimi Hendrix do a song together. Dirty Diana, Beat It. He always had those rock songs in there somewhere. So that was, of course, everybody knows Prince. Several songs he did showcased, this is one of the big ones and big hits from the Purple Rain soundtrack, When Doves Cry. This was played on black radio. So and they always talk about it not having bass, but at the same time it did have a lot of rock guitar in it, and it was still played on black radio. So, of course Prince had the soulful vocals, but I want to fast forward to the rock guitar part. Yeah, coming in toward the end. And sometimes the black radio stations would fade these songs out before it got to this part. They would be done faded the song out so you could, but if you brought the single or, you watch the video or whatever, you'll hear it. For instance, let's take a listen to the end. But the intro was straight Jimi Hendrix. Now they have a longer version where you hear more rock guitar. You kind of hear it fading out, but if you had the single, you would hear the rock guitar at the end. Also, Cameo was another group. Very funky, but they would throw elements of rock guitar in there. Everybody remembers this. Played all over black radio. And with the funky parts, they would take a little break and they would throw some rock guitar in there. You'll hear it kind of like toward the middle. Sometimes at the end, before it fades out, they would throw some rock guitar in there. But back in the day when we was listening to this on the radio, I didn't know anything about Jimi Hendrix. Listened to this song all day long and never thought anything about Jimi Hendrix. But now that I know, it's easy for me to hear these elements in a lot of these songs. So people was getting a taste of Jimi Hendrix and probably wasn't even knowing it back then. You know, because you listening to this and listen for the guitar to come in. Right here. It's real short. And they would do that in a lot of these R&B songs in the 80s. They do like a regular R&B thing and everything, and then out of nowhere, maybe in the middle, throw a little guitar in there to throw people off. But before you know it hits you, you right back in the groove like this. You know, so. And then they even throw some horns in there. But a lot of the long versions, you get to hear more guitar work. You know, but they kind of see how they throwing it in at the end. You know, right here. Yeah, that rocks out at the end. In the middle and at the end, they caught you with the rock guitar. The long version, you get more rock. But also Run DMC, when you talk about the hip hop side, you know, they threw a lot of rock box. Of course, they did their famous duet collaboration with Aerosmith. I mean, they had a lot of rock into their music. It'd be interesting if Jimmy would have lived to see him working with groups like Run DMC. Punk Funk, Rick James was doing his thing and throwing that rock guitar in there in the funk. I mean, just listen to him. I mean, look at that. Listen to that. Listen to that. That's straight Jimi Hendrix. Listen. And this wasn't a cover, but you could tell that this is his tribute to Jimmy, because, you know, he's talking about Are You Experienced? And of course, that's Jimmy's famous album, his debut album that exploded out the gate. You know, Are You Experienced? And he had a song, Are You Experienced, which wasn't really a single, but, you know, when you talk about Are You Experienced, first thing you think about is Jimi Hendrix. So you hear that rock guitar in there. And you know, Rick James loved Jimi Hendrix. You know, so it was nice to see him pay tribute. Are You Experienced? Oh, that's something else. I got Cameo playing again. Also, another one was Lenny Kravitz. He's kind of one that didn't really classify into the R&B category, but he was very soulful. His vocals were very soulful, and he had that one hit that was played on R&B radio, because I remember it. This song. It Ain't Over Till It's Over. Uh, the faintest saying that I know Yogi Berra would say, but this was played on black radio a lot. This was probably his #1 song on black radio. I remember his then wife, he had Lisa Bonet in the video. I mean, it was, man. You know, and it doesn't sound like it would be a conduit for Jimmy, but there's just a little small part in here. Let's skip ahead and you'll hear what I'm talking about. It's real small. Comes out of nowhere, really. There you go. So you kind of wonder if Jimmy could have done a song like that where he played on like certain elements, like just kind of, you know, going with it like that. As we hit the 90s, you saw a lot of rap groups start to sample Jimmy. Not so much playing, but sampling his music. Like the Far Side, She Keeps On Passing Me By. They had a opening sample with was it Are You Experienced, where they had the backwards guitar opening the song. Also, my favorite rap group, A Tribe Called Quest, sampled Jimi Hendrix several times. There you go. That's Jimmy's voice. Rain All Day. Rain All Day. Then they kind of went into another sample, but that's Jimi Hendrix's voice right there. Then you had Cypress Hill, If I Could Just Kill a Man. They also used a sample from Jimi Hendrix Are You Experienced song. And R.I.P. to Shock G. You had Digital Underground.
Yo, Shock, man, people been coming up to me saying, yo, man, what's up with the underground, man? You guys old school, new school?
This is the way we swing.
What should I tell them?
Now, this is not your average everyday rap song. Here we come to go a ding and a dong. The bass strong is hip with all the dingling on. You hear that's the band of gypsies. That's who knows. And then yeah, they cutting it up right here. That's the way we swang. With Jimi Hendrix. And I think there's another part where they sample Buddy Miles' voice. Let me see if I can get to that part. So that's Shock G. They sampled Jimi Hendrix and Buddy Miles. And then you had LL Cool J, who also used some Jimi Hendrix samples in his song. I bring all of that out in the book and tell you exactly what songs they use. Also, I actually trivia question. Who was the first rap group to sample Jimi Hendrix? A lot of people think it's Digital Underground, but it was actually Two Live Crew. They sampled Jimi Hendrix on a song I think called My Seven Bizzos, like a Benz, but it was one of their earlier albums.
Yo, Shock, man, people been coming up to me.
Also, throughout the years, you had countless R&B, soul groups, funk groups, jazz groups, hip-hop groups that have covered Jimi Hendrix songs, even mentioned his name in their songs. Of course, the Isley Brothers mentioned Jimmy. They did a kind of like, not a direct cover, but they had Machine Gun. They did their own thing on it. Chuck Berry even mentioned Jimmy's name. Betty Davis, of course, mentioned her friend Jimmy's name in her songs. Diggable Planets, Jimmy Would Have Dug Us. They mentioned Jimmy's name, you know, not Doodlebug, but Butterfly, he's from Seattle. Drake paying homage to Jimi Hendrix. This guy here called Future, he's called himself Future Hendrix, but at one time he was just called Future. He's an Atlanta rapper. Junie Morrison even did a song dedicated to Jimi Hendrix. Remember that song, The Groove Is in the Heart by D-Light? It had also had Bootsy Collins and Q-Tip. I think Q-Tip mentioned Jimi Hendrix in that song. Of course, Bootsy, he's always showing love to Jimi Hendrix in everything he does. So when it comes to Jimi Hendrix, we have to call him a true master of fusion. Now, think about this. What category would you place songs like Purple Haze, Voodoo Child, Machine Gun, Easy Rider? They have elements of rock, R&B, funk, and blues. What about songs like Manic Depression, Up From the Skies, Third Stone from the Sun, South Saturn Delta? All of these songs have heavy jazz influences. Doriella Dufontaine has strong elements of early hip-hop in it. Stepping Stone, I'm a Man, you can hear the country elements in those songs. Remember, which kind of sounds like the Four Top Sugar Pie Honey Bunch to me, Little Miss Lover, Earth Blues, and Angel, they all have strong ties to Jimmy's R&B roots. Jimmy had a whole album full of blues songs, which of course was called, what else? Blues. That's the first album that I ever had of Jimi Hendrix. Jimmy's catalog with Curtis Knight, a song called Strato Strut, Dolly Dagger, and most of the Band of Gypsies album, those songs just delve straight into funk. So these are all things of Jimi Hendrix. That's why I call him a true master of fusion. Now, in my book, the last chapter is a deep analyzation of Jimmy's Black legacy, and it features unique research on his outreach to the Black community, which mainly came in his last 2 years of his life, 1969, 1970, his views on the national anthem and race, analyzed his lyrics and writings on race in a book called Cherokee Mist that came out. I examined his musical lineup in chronological order. I took a deep dive into his free United Block Association benefit concert in Harlem, September 5th, 1969. You can see in this picture here, if you look closely at the shirts, you see these two ladies, well, there's at least one of them, was pictured on my front book cover. And they have United Block Association on their shirts. You see some more kids over here. So these kids were the kids that Jimmy was doing the benefit concert for, a Black group, youth group in Harlem. And you can see the famous, I don't know if that's a robe or whatever it is that he has on that he's featured in the book too. So this was probably just after the photo was taken or before. He was just hanging out with some kids. And then I have something interestingly called Jimmy's diffusion into not the mainstream, but the Black stream. Jimmy's diffusion into the Black stream, where we're starting to see more and more Black people, including major Black institutions, starting to embrace Jimmy. So now when they're coming up with Black History Month, or they're coming up with Black Music Month, which is in June, You're starting to see Jimi Hendrix featured. I just saw something recently from TV One where they put all of these black R&B people on there in a collage, and boom, right in there was Jimi Hendrix along with Ray Charles, Michael Jackson, James Brown, Whitney Houston, all these people, NWA. You know, Jimi Hendrix was right in the mix. So we're starting to see Jimi slowly but surely get his dream that was deferred, which is to be incorporated not just into the rock categories or whatever, but also into all facets of black culture. Jimi Hendrix in his element. This is how I close out my book, with a picture of Jimi, which looks like a smirk on his face. You know, this is a close-up of when he was in Harlem with the two ladies on his side. This is the face of a man at ease and at home. He's in Harlem. He seems to know it will be different this time around. He knows that his new music is going to attract more black people. He has a look on his face that says, you wait and see what I got in store for all of y'all. And now he would soon debut his Band of Gypsies lineup and make history after this photo was taken. But sadly, he died about a year after this photo was taken. He knew what he had in store. And the next picture shows why he had that smirk on his face. This is Jimi Hendrix at his Harlem concert. And just look at the sea of humanity there in Harlem as they prepare to check out Jimi and his concert. Now, bear in mind that these people stayed into the wee hours of the night because Jimi Hendrix was the last act to come up on the stage. So these are diehard fans. These people, either they're diehard fans or they're just very curious, but they wanted to see what was going on. You know, they wanted to check out Jimi. And so you see the crowd of mostly black people, but you see not just men, you see women in there as well. Some of these, the small kids, you see some small kids still staying up late at night. So this is a very eclectic crowd that probably one of his biggest black crowds out in the open air like that. Come to see Jimi Hendrix play in Harlem. So that's going to do it for this time. And the next time on our Masterclass, we're going to focus in on Jimi's special trip to Newark, New Jersey, Symphony Hall, April 5th, 1968. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be something very interesting that we'll check out. That a lot of people don't really talk about. They talk about James Brown, but not so much Jimi's trip to Newark around the time of the Martin Luther King assassination. So stay tuned for that.